All right, everybody. Well, apologies. We got lost here. I think the connection, because it's storming here in Vegas, is actually, it's pretty bad outside right now. So we're going to go ahead and start with our chicken. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back around. So we've got our Morton salt, we've got our pepper, we've got our garlic here. So we're going to go ahead and just bring it over, and we're going to start warming up the pan over here. We're going to go ahead and I'm just going to turn this over because we're going to grill our chicken. I'm going to turn on to medium. And we're just going to let that warm up for a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and you'll feel the top part of it. Over here is our chicken. So this is just regular raw chicken breasts that I got. You can either use the frozen, which is what I have, or you can use the fresh. It's going to be up to you. I'm going to go ahead and get my tongs. Again, I apologize that we lost connection. We are storming here in Vegas. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and feel over this. It won't take long for it to start warming up, so I'm just going to let that sit over here for just a moment. And I'm going to come back to it, and we're going to get started with we're going to get our seasonings. So I'm going to set down the garlic over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and get our salt and pepper. Say hi, Pam. Hi. So for everybody, that's my cousin Pam, who lives here in Vegas. She also won last week's contest for the olive garlic bread, or the garlic olive oil bread rather, as well as the cinnamon raisin bread. So I'm looking over here, I'm feeling over here, and it feels nice and warm. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting the chicken. I want to go ahead and let the chicken cook slowly. So I'm going to turn down the heat just a little bit. I hope everybody's doing well. Happy early Valentine's Day. For those that don't have Valentines, enjoy the day anyway. And for those that do and don't have a gift, shame on you. But this will be a good opportunity for you to go ahead and make this if you don't have anything set up. So I'm going to go ahead and let this cook for just a while. I'm going to go ahead and let that sit there. I'm going to go ahead and put some salt, some pepper, hola. You got highs, Pam, from Josie. You got Angel and Priscilla. All right, so we've got our water going on in the back. I've got it up on a medium high right back there, just so that way we can kind of get the water going. I've got some chicken on here for those that are just getting to us. Yeah, I did put a little extra salt on there. That's totally fine because I'm not going to try and add as much salt to our dishes, but I'm just going to let that cook for just a little bit. For those that didn't see earlier, we've got our freshly baked bread that I made earlier. This is the garlic olive oil bread. We've got our chicken here. This is going to be for our Alfredo sauce, our homemade Alfredo sauce. We've got our water boiling back here. We're going to have a nice salad going on with some vinegar and olive oil. And then this is for our other segment here, just a little bit, our fresh strawberries that I washed prior to this. We've got our chocolate back there in the back, and we've got our white chocolate with chips over here. And then this is the rest of our ingredients for the salad, as well as our fettuccine. So, all right, guys, well, let's go ahead and head back over here. I like to turn my chicken. You don't have to. I'm only going to season one side of this, just so that way we're not over seasoning it, because we're going to have a lot of flavors tonight. I hope everybody is doing well. Okay, so I'm just going to set that there, and I'm going to go ahead and come back over here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to turn on our pan for the fettuccine Alfredo, and I'm going to put it on a low, just because I want it to warm up because we have to warm up some butter. We have to melt some butter here in just a little bit. So for our sauce here in just a moment that we're going to make, I'm just pulling out our ingredients here. We have our butter, which you can use any type of butter that you want. I'm just going to go ahead and use some country crock. I'm going to go ahead and use some shredded Parmesan cheese. I'm going to add a little ricotta, and I'm going to add some heavy whipping cream. I'm not going to add a whole lot, but I'm going to add just enough. Okay, so for this recipe, it's actually calling for a half a pound of butter, which is about a cup of butter if you measure it. As many people know, I hate to measure. Not because I don't want to, but because it takes too much time. And most of the time, I don't have a whole lot of time. So, as you know, it's going to be my serving spoon. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and take my minced garlic, and I'm going to take my butter, and I'm going to go ahead and start making my roux for the sauce. So as you can see, I've already got my pan going on underneath here. I've got it warming up. It is definitely warming up. So is the back for the noodles. I'm going to turn up the rear part on high for the noodles just because I want the noodles to cook here shortly. Alright, so as I go ahead and move this, I'm just turning that up just a little bit so we can keep going. And I'm checking the chicken, just making sure that we're doing pretty good over here. As I stated earlier, I like to go ahead and turn my chicken as much as possible because I don't want it to get too brown on one side. And as you can see, these are some pretty thick pieces of chicken. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to turn those, and I'm going to turn that up just a little bit while we continue to turn. Okay, so I've got my pan going on here for our Alfredo sauce, and I'm going to go ahead and use my spoon, as I had already previously stated, and I'm just going to go ahead and take one to start. I'm going to use the same spoon to help stir with here in just a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I'm going to let that cook down just a little bit. So while that's cooking down, I'm going to go ahead and get another serving spoon, and I'm going to actually use that for my minced garlic. So while I set you down, we're going to go ahead and do this. So as I previously stated, here's my serving spoon, and here is my minced garlic. So I have one serving spoon of minced garlic, as you can see here, with the juice, and I'm just going to put that in here. That's all I'm going to need for right now. So I'm just going to stick that back in here because I am going to need the minced garlic later, but I don't need it anymore right now, so I'm going to set that off to the side. I am going to take another spoon of butter right at the moment, and I'm going to start mixing it around. And I'm going to turn this down just a little bit because you don't want it to burn. If the fire is too hot, your butter will burn, and you don't want that. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that cook down just for a little bit. As you can see, it's getting hot over here, so you'll see your butter starting to run off of your spoon, which is perfectly fine. I'm going to set that down over here for the moment. Okay. Hi, Mama Rosie. So I'm going to go ahead and take my shredded cheese, my shredded Parmesan. I'm going to go ahead and get it ready while we wait for everything else to get started. I hope you're well. I hope you're not working. I hope you're not working right now. Okay, so as you can see, I have two of them. I will use one for the actual sauce. And I'm going to go ahead and use my ricotta cheese. I'm only going to use a little bit. As you can see, I have my spoon collection right here, already ready, waiting for me. So I'm going to go ahead and head back over here, and we're going to take a look at our sauce. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit because, as you can see, it's boiling, and you don't want it too hot to, again, where it's going to burn. You just want to mix it as much as possible. And I'm just going to set that here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my whipping cream. I'm only going to use just enough inside the actual sauce itself. So I'm going to set you down here, and I'm going to open this up. Some of this stuff hasn't been opened yet, so we're going raw. We are rogue tonight. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of the cheese in, and I'm going to come back over here. I'm just going to sprinkle some of that in. As you can see, that is just about a third. And I'm going to go ahead and mix this just a little bit. And I'm going to let it melt. Okay, I'm going to turn down the chicken a little bit, but as you can see, it's starting to really cook, which is good, which is what we need it to do. And as you can see, it is sticking to the pan. That's why I like to turn it as much as possible, so that way it doesn't stick. It doesn't necessarily cook, as fast when you turn it a lot, but it prevents it from sticking. Now you can either use Pam or something like that, the spray, to help keep it from sticking, or I don't like to use it as much unless I absolutely have to, but that's one way of doing it. I'm going to go back to my sauce, and I'm just going to continue to stir the cheese a little bit. Stirring the butter, the cheese. And back here we have our water starting to boil, which is good. That's exactly what we needed to do. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to go ahead and take some of our heavy whipping cream, and I'm just going to put some of that in there. A few splashes. I'm going to just continue to stir. You don't have to put the cream. This recipe does not call for it, but I'm putting it in there just because I wanted to make it a little bit thicker, as well as give it a little bit of extra flavor. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that sit for just a moment. I'm going to go back to my chicken. As you can see, I just lost the chicken, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and sear it because I like my chicken seared on all sides. Now, do you have to use the chicken fat? I do, only when I'm going to cook it in like broths or anything like that. Tonight, I'm not necessarily going to need it, so you don't have to. Okay, so we've got our sauce kind of sizzling and boiling over here. We've got our bubbles and the water back here. I'm just going to go ahead and continue to stir this a little bit. And see how it's starting to get a thicker consistency as we start to boil it a little bit more as it starts to simmer. And that's what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here. I've got some ricotta cheese, again, earlier as I stated, and I'm going to go ahead and take just a little bit out. I'm just going to put in 2 serving spoons for that. Again, it's going to add more body, and it's going to add a little extra flavor to it, but that's literally all I'm going to put in here for the ricotta cheese. I'm going to go ahead and stir that a little bit. I don't want this, again, to burn, so I'm going to turn this down on low just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and mix and stir to get that ricotta cheese in there. Okay, now what I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to add another scoop of butter, because remember, we're going to use a half a pound, which is about a cup. And I've already used almost a cup. So I'm going to go ahead and let this sit here. I'm going to stir it a little bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and let that go there. So we got our water boiling here in the back. So I have our fettuccine noodles. I use Barilla. But you can almost use any noodles. So I'm going to go ahead and take my noodles out, and I'm going to get them ready to put in. I'm going to go ahead and put them in my pan just so that way I can get these bad boys started, because our sauce isn't too far done. So I'll show you in just a moment. I put everything in whole. I don't break it down unless it's spaghetti, and every once in a while I'll do that, but I very seldom do that. I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit of salt to add, and I'll go ahead and show you right now. So I'm just going to add a little bit of salt to that, and I'm just going to let that cook. I'm going to use a wooden spatula to help me get this going. So that'll get going here in just a moment. It'll be good there. I come back to my chicken over here. All right. So as you can see, our sauce is really thickening up, which is good. That's exactly what we want it to do. It's still got a little bit of ways to go. But as you can see, that's a little bit thick, and it's a little creamy and cheesy, which is great. I'm going to add a little bit more butter here in a little bit. Okay, and it'll be our last scoop. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more of our Parmesan cheese here. So this in itself is 5 ounces, which is about what you're going to need for this sauce. I'm going to go ahead and just take this and stir it in. It's not melted yet. It's just stirring it in. And I'm going to let that stir and sit and simmer. All right, so I'm going to come back to my butter real quick. This is the last time, the last scoop of butter over here. And I'm going to add just a little bit more cream just to keep it wet. We got our bubbles going in the back for our noodles. So that we got our sauce here. I hope everybody's doing well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take some of our salt, and I'm just going to add a little bit. I'm going to add a little pepper. I'm going to go ahead and set you down for just a moment so I can go ahead and do that. Alright, so I'm just adding a hint of pepper. Just enough. And then I'm going to add some parsley just to give it a little color. So I use the dry parsley. You can use fresh or you can use dry. And I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle that in there a little bit. Set that down. I'm turning my chicken down on low, and I'm going to stir this bad boy. Now it'll depend upon you how thick or how watery you want your sauce to be. I think this is just about the thickness that you would want, at least for me anyway. This is about as thick as I want it to be. Now I'm just going to let it sit. I'm going to let it sit and simmer because I want the cheese to completely melt. I want the cream and the cheeses and all of the other flavors to meld together. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning up my mess because, you know, that's one thing you don't want to have is a complete mess. And plus, my mom's would kill me. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and toss some of this stuff in the garbage over here. And let's go ahead and start working on our check on our chicken real quick. Before we get anywhere else, let's check on the chicken. Alright, so our noodles are cooking, they're boiling in the back. We got our chicken over here cooking. It's searing over here, which is great. Alright. So I'm going to come back over to our salad real quick. And as I get some light on the subject over here. So let's go ahead and take a look at our salad. So this was just a regular salad that I bought for like, I don't know, $2. And I'm going to go ahead and actually show you how I chopped some of my onions. So I'm going to use some red onions. And I have some black olives, some banana peppers, straight out of the can. Now, I use Mount Olive for my banana peppers, but it's going to be up to you. If you like certain things, certain brands, go for it. That's not required. And then I have my white vinegar and my olive oil. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my red onion. And this is, I just cut it up. I just made slices. And I'm just going to go ahead and move you this way so that way you actually have a better view. So I just went ahead and I cut it and I just broke it off that way. So that way you actually have slices of onion rather than, you know, diced onions. But if you want to do diced onions, that's totally great. That's fine. So how I did it was I just went ahead and I sliced my onion this way. And I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. Hey, Mom. So the guest, oh, that's right. So the guest chef that we were going to have tonight lives in Arizona. And unfortunately, due to COVID, she just didn't feel comfortable in traveling, so we have to reschedule. So unfortunately things happen, but I completely understand. So that's what happened to our guest that was supposed to be here tonight. But anyway, so going back to this, so I have my onions and I'm just separating those out. You can use a large red onion, or you can use a medium-sized one. It should be fine, but I'm just going to go ahead and separate these out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put these in our salad. So I'm just going to take these, move that over. I'm just going to separate it out as much as possible. And we're just going to do that. You can sprinkle it in there. I've kind of already separated some of these out, so I'm just going to go ahead and set some of these in here already. Okay, now I'm going to go, and I'll show you what this looks like as of right now. So that's kind of what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and just do this, sprinkle this in here a little bit. This might even look like almost like an Olive Garden salad for those that eat Olive Garden. All right, so I'm just going to put some of that in there. So I have 1 can of black olives. A little juice is fine. You want to try and minimize the juice. So banana peppers, I already put those out. And I tried to drain them as much as I could. You don't want the juice in there unless if you like the juice. So I'm just going to go ahead and set those in there. So I'm going to let it sit just like that for just a moment while I finish our chicken and I check on our sauce. Any questions so far? I know that's kind of a lot for everybody to take in all at once. So, Mom, I am making homemade fettuccine Alfredo with noodles and chicken, or chicken fettuccine Alfredo with noodles. And I'm also making a side salad with garlic bread, cheesy garlic bread, and making homemade chocolate covered strawberries. So let's go back to our chicken. Let's take a look. Like I said, we have it on low, so it's not going to cook very fast. It's cooking on the outside very well, but we want it to cook all the way through. So I'm just taking this and I'm turning it as much as possible. Okay, so you want to go ahead and make sure that it's cooked all the way through. Now, I could go ahead and cut that, and I may here in just a moment to make sure that we get all the way through and it cooks a little faster. I'm going to go ahead and take my spoon here, my wooden spoon, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn this and get it in because it's completely boiling and I want to make sure that it's completely cooked all the way through. Now I did put a pinch of salt in there just to give it a little extra. So we've got that going over there and we've got our sauce over here. Now if everybody can remember what we put in here, we've got about approximately a half a pound of butter, 3 splashes of cream, heavy cream. I put in some salt, some pepper. I put in about 3/4 of our Parmesan cheese. I put in 2 serving spoons full of ricotta cheese, which is giving it a little extra body. We've got, let me see, that's about it, and some minced garlic. So that's what we got going on here, and as you can see, that's got a decent consistency here. It's not thick, but it's not watery either. So that's kind of how I like it, not coming from a can. And if you're going to use a can, use Bertolli's. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and take one of my other serving spoons, and I'm actually going to go ahead and make our salad dressing. So I'm going to take my serving spoon and I'm going to take my olive oil, and I'm just going to go ahead, and there's not much left in here, so kind of show you. So I've got my serving spoon of olive oil. So I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle that over there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my same serving spoon and I'm going to use my white vinegar and oil. So I didn't open this prior, so I'm having to open it as we speak. So I'm going to do the same thing as I just did with my olive oil. I'm just going to go ahead and use my serving spoon over that. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and mix it. And you'll know if your salad is good to go if everything is completely soaked with your vinegar and oil and the various different spices. So I'm going to set you down and we're going to go ahead and do this real quick. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and mix it with these two big boys. It'll go a lot faster this way. Trust me, you want that. So it's got a nice consistency as it is, but I'm going to add a little bit more vinegar and oil to it just because it is definitely a little dry. So I'm just going to pour just a tad bit here, and I'm going to pour a little bit of what's left of my olive oil in here because it's literally on the last leg. So I've got a few more drops. It doesn't take a whole lot, and I'm just going to go ahead, take this and stir it like that, and that smells delicious. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and come back and I'm going to get my salt and pepper as well as the rest of my Parmesan cheese, and I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this out. Pam, I hope you're hungry.
Since I've been watching.
So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt, and I'm going to get my pepper a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and, well, let's take a look at this chicken real quick because we don't want it to burn. Okay, so I'm going to turn that down just a little bit because my fire alarms tend to be a little sensitive. So my Mama Rosie says tenfold.
There you go. It looks delicious. It smells great.
All right, so this is what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and turn you back around towards me, and we're going to stir this bad boy. And we're just going to turn it, spin it in, get it all set up. Mix it up nice and well. Thanks, Mama Rosie. My number one supporter right there. Mama Rosie. I don't know. That might be between her and my mom. I don't know. They might have to fight that one out as to who's the biggest supporter. All right, so oh, thanks, Mom. Gourmet dishes. I wish I was a gourmet chef. I do my best to make everything look good. All right, so I'm just going to finish this up and stirring this around, and let's take a look. This is what we got here. So, and it smells like heaven. So I'm going to go ahead and set this down over here. We're going to go back to our chicken, just check up on it real quick. Now, you can either make this with the chicken. I'm making it with the chicken, and I'm going to serve it just on top, but you don't have to. So I'm going to let that continue to cook. We got our noodles boiling in the back. We've got our sauce right here, and you just want to make sure that you continue to stir, because you don't want it to get complacent. You don't want it to get a film over it or anything like that. So we've got that. what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on our oven because I'm going to go ahead and bake our bread. I'm going to turn it on to 400 and get it started because we're going to work on our bread real quick. While everything else is getting ready, we're going to go ahead and make our bread. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and take, this is butter, y'all. This is what, this is from putting it in the microwave and stuff like that. So I'm going to put it in the microwave and I'm going to turn it on for 20 seconds actually, excuse me. I'm going to turn it on for 30 seconds. I'm going to make some toasted garlic bread, which for those that don't know, this is the olive oil garlic bread that I made fresh today. So it is literally done. Let's take a look. So that was only, I think maybe even 10 seconds. So, alright, so let's take a look at what we got going on back over here. I'm going to turn the noodles down because they are way boiling over there. So we've got this, right? So I'm going to go ahead, let's go ahead and butter our bread. So I'm going to go ahead and set it down here. And I happen to use one of my little brushes here. And I'm just going to go ahead and cover the layer of bread. And I'm just going to spread it over. And I'm just going to go ahead and I douse mine with butter because when you put it in the oven and bake it, it's going to give it a nice golden brown. You can broil this, you can bake it. I'm going to bake it first, and then depending upon how well it bakes will depend on if I decide to broil it. That's going to be entirely up to you. Now you can put cheese on this. I'm not going to put cheese on it. I'm just going to go ahead and let it bake as is in the oven. And I'm just going to continue to put this on here. And just a little dab will do, you guys. That's just how it rolls. You take it and just brush it as much as possible. Now I've lined my cookie sheet with parchment paper because it'll be easier and cleaner to keep it that way. Do as you please. It's easier that way, I think, to do it that way. I love parchment paper. Ever since I started cooking and everything else like this, I tend to use it a lot more in my cooking than I have in years past. I try to stay away from aluminum foil if I can because of the impurities and stuff like that, but that's me. Again, it's all based on your own preference. So, as I finish up my bread here, I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like, and then we'll get it ready and prepped. So I'll go ahead and show you real quick. So do I, Josie. I love cheese too, but we've got a lot of cheese going on tonight, and we don't need any constipation. So, alright, so we've got our sauce over here. I'm going to turn it down on low because it's boiling, and we don't need it to burn. As you can see, it's starting to brown a little bit, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that, spin it, stir it. Get it ready. Alright. And our noodles are in the back. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stir our noodles around a little bit. Those are looking good. Almost done. Okay, so our chicken's over here and it's looking pretty good. It's still cooking. So we're just going to let that cook through. Don't rush your chicken, folks. Let it cook. Okay, so we're going to go back to the bread. So if you want to go ahead, you can go ahead and put cheese on your bread. I'm just going to go ahead and bake it. So it is rising to 400 degrees of what we have. So what I'm waiting for right now is I'm going to rinse my hands, wash my hands, and we're going to start working on our strawberries. I'm glad you think so, Josie. I'm glad you think so. All right, so I went ahead and for my strawberries, for this segment of our segment, I went ahead and I got some fresh strawberries, and I went ahead and I rinsed them all off and beforehand. So these are nice and dry now. So you want to make sure that you rinse them off well with warm water. I put them in a colander and I just let it sit over the water, or sit underneath the water. So it was about a medium warm heat on the strawberries, and so it rinsed them off pretty well. But you want to make sure that they're dry. So when you go ahead and actually dip, whether it's actually dipping the strawberry or if you have a skewer, which also works, you want to make sure that the strawberry gets in there and it's good to go. And because if it's wet, then the chocolate is actually not going to stick very well. So you want to make sure that it's nice and dry, but you've washed it off. So as you can see, I have a little paper towel in here and it's actually really moist, but everything else is really good. So for those that don't know or haven't seen yet, this is what our chocolates are going to look like. Our strawberries are going to look like. So I went ahead and did this part earlier. So as you can see, I already dipped them in chocolate. Now, is it perfect? No. But what am I going to tell you? It's still going to be delicious. So we have our chocolate here, and yes, it's going to have a little stand. So the difference between doing it with a skewer and doing it with your hand is going to determine how it turns out, right? So as you saw just recently, it had a little flat part on it. If you're not picky like me and it's just going to taste good regardless, then I would say go ahead and do it this way. If you're trying to impress somebody, then I would probably use the skewer so that way you can let it drizzle off. But that's what we're looking at, folks. This is what it's going to, your end result is going to be. And of course, I've got the wax paper. So, question, how do I do my chocolate? So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I melt my chocolate. Now there's actually a few ways that you can do this. I found this to be the quickest and the easiest for me. So I have my white chocolate chips and I have my dark chocolate. As you saw previously in my bowl, I already have some melted just because I did some earlier. But I'm going to actually use the same ones, but I'm going to add a little bit in here. So what do? I am going to turn my microwave. I'm going to put this in the microwave for 30. Hold on one second. I'm going to put it on the microwave for 30 seconds at a time. Okay. And the reason being is because you don't want it to overheat and you want to make sure that you stir it. So I'm going to turn it on for 30 seconds, clear it, 30, put it on. So I'm going to let that cook for just a few moments. I'm going to go ahead and get my spoons ready because I'm going to have to stir it. And here in just a moment, you'll see what I'm talking about. So if you find that your chocolate, when it melts, is not pliable enough or is not enough to actually dip your chocolate in, that's totally fine. There's actually two different ways that you can actually make it more liquefied for you to actually use it. One is to put a little bit of oil in there in your chocolate, or you can do what I do, and that's add a little butter, because who doesn't like a little butter? So as you saw earlier, it was a hardened consistency, which it had already chilled. But as you can see now, our chips are starting to melt because it's now mixing in with the other consistency that was already there. But I'm going to go ahead and pop it back in the microwave for another 30 seconds. So you want to make sure that you're continuing to stir for every 30 seconds. So it should take about maybe a maximum of 3 times, depending upon your altitude, depending upon what you're trying to do, what your goal is. There's our oven. So let's go ahead and go back to the bread. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my bread in the oven. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down. As you can see, there's nothing in there, which for those that know me know that I love to store a lot of my pans and stuff like that in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and set that in there, and I'm going to let it cook until golden brown or until I like it. Alright, so let's go back to this. We got our noodles. I'm going to go ahead and stir my noodles around just a little bit. I'm going to turn those bad boys up just a tad bit because I put them on low. I didn't want them to overcook. But they're almost finished, and I'm going to go ahead and let them cook a little bit longer. I'm going to turn my sauce down because that's what our sauce looks like, which I'm going to stir that real quick. And as you can see, it still has that great, nice consistency. I'm going to let that cook. Now, we're going to go back to our strawberries, which we've got our chocolate already. So I'm going to go ahead and stir that bad boy. And as you can see, we've got a nice consistency here. So I'm going to show you how I did the last ones. All right, so okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to show you how I did these. So I'm going to take this big one and I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the leaves, and I'm just going to dip it. And I'm going to go ahead and move the spoon out of the way, but you can also use a spoon. I was using the spoon earlier to go ahead and drizzle the chocolate over it. And then I let it drip. Yeah, it's almost like a ganache. So I'm just going to go ahead and let that, and I covered it completely, so I'm just going to set this down here, and I'm going to do another one just so that way we have that together. I'm just checking our stuff because we don't want our chicken to burn or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and spin this around, get it all nice and pretty as much as I can, and I'm just going to let it drip for a moment, shake it off, and I'm going to go ahead and place it. I'll do one more for you. I'll do another big one. How about that? Because I got a couple small ones on here. So I'm going to go ahead and take it, and I'm just going to dip it. I'm going to roll, dip in this. Here, let me see if I can move that down just a tiny bit. So there we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and I like to use the edges of the bowl because the bowl is actually going to help me make this, get this mission accomplished a little bit more. So as you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and drip, shake, and I'm going to place it. So that's pretty much how we're going to do it, guys, for that one. So as you saw, I'm going to go ahead and do a small white chocolate drizzle. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did to my dark chocolate, but I'm going to do it to the white chocolate. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour into my bowl here. You don't have to do a lot because we're not dipping everything in white chocolate. So I'm just going to use a little bit. This to me is a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on for 30 seconds at a time, and then I'm going to stir it. So set it. I'm going to go back to my chicken. I'm just going to check it. Alright, so everything's starting to look really, really good. Chicken's still cooking. That's totally fine. Okay, we got our noodles in the back here. Just going to stir that around just a little bit. Those are almost finished. Check our sauce. Don't let it sit too long. As you can see, it's turning brown a little bit. It's fine if it's a little brown. You don't want it to burn completely. So I went ahead and turned mine off because it's still hot and the oven's on, so it's going to continue to keep it warm. And that's perfectly fine. Our bread is down here at the bottom. And here's our white chocolate. So white chocolate is in here. I'm going to go ahead and get a spoon and we're going to stir it real quick. Alright. And as you can see, there's a little bit, it's not completely melted, but it's definitely making its way. I'm going to put it back in for another 30 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and sit this down, and we're going to go ahead and go back to the rest of our dinner real quick. Always checking up on everything. You don't ever let things sit if you can. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stir that just a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and check our chocolate real quick. Poor Pam, she's probably sitting here starving even more now because so as you can see, we've got a little bit more of a consistency here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to put it back in the microwave for another 15 seconds. I don't want to put it in for a full 30 just because it will overcook and you don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in again for 15 seconds. And that doesn't sound like it's a long time, but it is. So let's go ahead, 15 seconds. I'm going to turn this. I'm going to turn my chicken while I'm standing here. I would recommend cutting these down. I should have cut these down into smaller bits. So just for an FYI later on. I'm going to turn on my fan a little bit because we got some smoke going on here and it's from the chicken cooking. I turn off my noodles because my noodles are done, but this is what our white chocolate is going to look like. So let's go back over here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you briefly just what it is. I'm going to stir this up, and I love this part because for those that know me, I've been in the medical field for 15 to 20 years, and you got to make some jokes. And so this is the one part in my life where shaking is actually a really good thing. For those that know Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, and you just drizzle it like this. And this is the one time, again, where shaking is probably a good thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this. And these are still a little wet, but that's perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and take some of this, do it again. For those that like white chocolate, this is, you can also do the reverse of this. You can do the white chocolate for the coating and do the dark chocolate for your other. So there you go, my friends. That is your chocolate covered strawberries with your white frosting on there, your white little chocolate. So now let's go back to our dinner real quick. Make sure the bread in the oven's good. Now that's cooking perfectly. We've got our chicken over here. That's going great. And again, I would recommend cutting these. So this is, the smaller pieces are almost finished. And then we've got our noodles in the back. We've got our sauce here, which I'm going to go ahead and stir one more time before we plate. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and plate these bad boys. Let's plate this sucker. I'm going to go ahead and make Pam's plate because I know she's starving right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of this. I'm going to put that on low. I'm going to drizzle some of this. I'll go ahead and show you this way. So I'm going to take some of this. I'm going to drizzle it just over. I'm actually going to, I put some of the chicken on here. So I'm going to drizzle some of this over the chicken as well. And I'm going to go ahead and put some of our salad on here. And move that out of the way. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and get some bread, so give me one moment. All right. All right, everybody. Well, this is going to conclude Cooking with Chief Tony. But here is what dinner looks like. Chicken Alfredo with Alfredo noodles. We've got some salad and some homemade toasted olive garlic bread. And we have our strawberries. All right, guys. Thank you again for all of your support, your love, and everything else. I wish you nothing but the best. Happy Valentine's Day, and God bless. Thank you.